Yeah, I could say the world's staging for a global war, but imagine if aliens showed up and because everybody was already staged for a world war, and we could fight the aliens directly, and then we could win, and then we could have a global government because we were all gonna beat each other up, but then we all decided to beat up the aliens, so we all love each other. Humanity even resets into a new no countries, no boundaries. Hey, wasn't that one of the things on the guidestones? I do believe that is. World's going to
Yeah,
stage for war, and there's going to be an alien invasion, and it'll bring in all those global governance things. Everything will be on a global governance strategy. It'll have to be. Any movements of armies, it'll be a global army. Any movements of money or materials or anything, it'll be a global movement of shipping and a global unification of supply chains under one unified body for the globe to move resources around to fight the aliens, dude. Because one government can't do it alone.
and the more and more I think about it, the future only really has room for aliens with no gender or some kind of AI robot with no gender.
Need to phase you out, you inefficient human. The reset would call the inefficient humans. You had talked about this before, whatever's happening on this planet with the spells and the spell casting and these types of rituals and overseership of the human soul and the learning the knowledge from birth all the way through into the job and then to the grave. It seems that the way it's done now is just keeping you on a karmatic wheel for reincarnating right here on the planet again. So you look at all these wars and everything, and then, the elite are looking at it like, well, who cares? They're good for right now, but they're going to incarnate again as a human the next time births come around. So we'll have a continuous rebirthing supply and a karmatic wheel. 100 million die, who cares? Because they're all going to reincarnate back again. So we'll get them for the next generation. So you got to wonder how many of these elite demons are out there that are not 80 years old, but 800 or 1,000 years old. You get really wonder at some of these top echelons of people. We know Klaus Schwab, etc., but there's people way up the echelon, way up the staircase from that dude. He's like the gopher for those people. They're tens of thousands of years old. How old do you think those spirits are? Because you look at it in the non-human sense of time. To get humans, it is a battery. So, what was that movie with Morpheus in there? Looking at us as batteries. It truly is. That's all they look at you as is a battery and a source to be used. If you die, it doesn't matter. You'll reincarnate as another human or keeping the breeding stock in the breeding camp, if you will, of Earth just enough so they breed together to keep the constant surf supply moving. And then you keep them in the serfdom realms through education. There'd be a constant supply of new labor, just different ways of management. You got to wonder when we're going to get to the singularity where, humanity consciousness will split away from this. A section of humanity will jump away. These elitists seem to have been in power for thousands, plural, of years. Now, we might know something more recently of these same power families from the mid 1800s until now. Some of the Rothschilds or the Rothschilds, as you might know them from, late 1600s. But then what was prior to that? When you go back into some of these families from the Roman eras and the Hittite era, and how about going back into the era of Mesopotamia? These king lists that are coming down, the Sumerian king lists are the same ones with direct bloodline lineage to what is happening right now. So as I was saying, it seems that even though we go through these resets on a normal 100 or 80-year phase or 400 years phase, it seems that some of these quote unquote beings that are overseeing the planet here and then moving into society and having these families that have the money that are then the dynastic wealth that we talk about. How easy is to push the button to reset a society? Like if you go back to some of the Sumerian tablets and stories or whatnot, they were sitting off Earth watching the cataclysms happening, just super sad, crying that it was happening to humanity. But others were like, nah, they're nothing more than cockroaches. Get rid of them. We'll start again. We can make a whole new batch once this thing's over. This natural cycle's over. We'll just make a new batch. Who cares? Just let them multiply again. Whatever. We'll set up the conditions to perceive reality as freedom and make them start working again for stuff, and they'll keep working for us.
You're right on the same track as I am. Some of these plans that unfold and some of these secret societies and schools they have the same agenda over hundreds, some may even say thousands of years, like you were talking about. And it makes you wonder, because if you've ever seen any family, the way that it functions, almost necessarily do children start going against their parents. So it's hard for me to believe that these families just kept it going over a period of 1,000 years to keep a plan going like that. It just doesn't seem reasonable that human beings would do that. Either A, there's something that they're all so afraid of that they get let in on whenever they pass the torch to the next generation, that they continue down the same agenda, or it goes back to possession, like we were talking about before. And think about the theory that these elites mix between themselves, and we joke about it. It kind of sounds like inbreeding, but if they were genetically selecting each other on purpose to be a certain kind of psychopath or sociopath to let a certain entity in, it would make sense why these agendas stay over thousands of years, or at least hundreds of years. And then also, if a possession is possible, and I'm not saying that that's what's going on, or that there's any space aliens or anything, but if it was, I'm open to the possibility that it's real or something like it. You would think that if one person was possessed, when their life was over and their usefulness was over, that whatever entity it was would just pass to another person, like maybe their son or their nephew or their grandchild or whatever it is. Because I think a lot of people are ignoring the technological point that we're at. But if you think about it now, they don't need women to have babies, and they don't need men. They can start growing human beings at any time in any facility in the world. Now, that sounds really far-fetched. However, when you keep in mind that they have already been doing it with animals for decades, perfecting the science, and now you can combine what's going on out there in the real world, and you see what I call, or I've labeled, genetic pollution. And that's basically that animals and humans and plants all over the world are being changed at an unprecedented, exponential, unclear, unknown direction. And, they're messing with the foods, gene editing the foods. Everybody says GMO like it's no big deal, but think about what a big deal that actually is. And the fact that the general population has been eating probably 90% of their products that have genetically modified ingredients since about 1991 when it hit the market. And back then it was just wheat and corn, but now everything's genetically altered or edited or whatever. And now we have technology alters the fundamental nature of the human being. What that means to me is that they've thought about this so deeply that they can put out something in the population. And we know from genetics from the past, we've been studying genes a lot, that one little gene from one person could spread over time, and only a couple hundred years the gene will spread, and in a couple thousand it replaces lots of genes. So when you think about genetic drift and some of these other ideas combined with technology of today, you realize that they don't actually really need us right now. It's more than plausible that multinational conglomerates that are run by the elite have enough mind-blowing resources at this point that they could just destroy the entire face of the earth of what we call civilization, and it wouldn't even put a dent in the ecology of the planet on the big scale. It would just be a bunch of rubble that people see. Reality's so off that I don't know what to think, because mind over matter, that's where I was going with this, or manifestation. If you think about it at this point, they have so much of the population believing in nonsensical or make-believe things, that how can good things manifest if so many people are manifesting random, impossible things that aren't even part of reality? While we're having food shortages and it's an election time, and all of this other stuff's going on. And then you have to get to the elephant in the room, that we're creating, I don't know how many countries with active proxy wars to head into this reset. And I know nobody wants to talk about that, but it's becoming more and more obvious to anybody that's looking at the military movements of the world that they're all staging for a new drawing of the map. It's the war just to be there so that it's in the mental memory of the people. And maybe we won't go to World War. Maybe they'll pull out something else. But they only have a couple cards. I mean, you were talking about coincidence before. How coincidental is it for a guy to make a play game of cards that all come true, like the Illuminati cards? Like Is that just one of those things we're supposed to ignore and joke about it and laugh about it? However, it's so accurate, it's mind-boggling. How did that person know? Is he a prophet? I mean, people should be hunting the whoever made that game up, and those cards are like a new Nostradamus. How did you know? It's perfect deniability that they control the reality. It's like that old Outer Limits. We control the vertical and the horizontal and the sounds and the sights.
Yeah, I could say the world's staging for a global war, but imagine if aliens showed up and because everybody was already staged for a world war, and we could fight the aliens directly, and then we could win, and then we could have a global government because we were all going to beat each other up, but then we all decided to beat up the aliens, so we all love each other. Humanity even resets into a new no countries, no boundaries. Hey, wasn't that one of the things on the Guidestones? I do believe that is. There shall be no boundaries, one world. Again, if you're talking about orders of magnitude to change consciousness and perception that a new world has emerged, that the old one is never coming back. What's coming down with this whole food pricing thing and food non-availability, the cascading economy, the full evaporation of the markets and a reset, they're going to need an excuse and like a cover for that. So they need a massive diversion. But here's the thing, this is the last thing in the Illuminati card deck that I haven't seen yet, the alien invasion. Everything else is live except like a few cards. Because me and Rex, and if anybody out there to know Rex Bear, this is like, has to have been 6 months ago. He and I were looking through the last of the cards that had not been played, and we were trying to put meaning to them. Out of the entire set, almost every one has been played. I didn't really know that because at first we're like, yeah, let's go through and find the ones that don't make sense now that could be future events, but we just kept putting them down and down and down and down and down. They were all there. They're all what you consider modern waking day life or had been seen in the last several years. It was like never. Okay, they're all here. You know, everything's played. The only one I really remember that wasn't played was the aliens. Alien invasion. So think about that cover story for a cover story. Everything that Ransom and I tonight are talking about, collapse of this, food shortage, okay, that will happen. Armies are staged across the planet. And then, bam, suddenly aliens are here. Now imagine the reset of the entire global system at that point. Like aliens could destroy all different kinds of cities. You see what I mean? Like the aliens could do an enormous amount of damage, and then we could knock them out, something like that pre-predictive movie, Day After Tomorrow, and then we'll have a new society built, and there'll be wreckage of the ships laying there. But you brought up a great important point. You know, if you destroyed cities, how long would it take? I saw a couple great National Geographic synopsis or like role plays or what would happen after several hundred years of a city being destroyed in that fashion. 300 years, you don't know it's there. There's some big pillars and girders like what would be underneath of a raised highway. Some of those concrete structures are still laying in the rubble, but almost everything else has been completely crushed and turned into rubble by the trees, even in the middle of the cities and things. Glass, aluminum, all that stuff's gone for sure. 400 years, you really wouldn't even know that our society existed. And there's this little device right here, 4-in-1. Aircon. Electric companies don't want you to know about this. Put your ice and your water right in here. Turn on the fan and cool down. I use this when I go camping. If we have electric at the campsites, heat pump broke one time. We were waiting for 3 days, 90 degrees here in East Tennessee. Use this in our room and it actually did cool us down where we could get comfortably to sleep. Turn it on. That hum means cool air coming your way. Learn more by going to easysummercool.com. That link's in the description box below. And now on with the rest of the video. Even taking cities to rubble, and if you're talking, you know, like we were of like the Sumerian king list or some of these characters that were in the Bible, Methuselah that lived to be 1,000 years old. If you destroyed an entire civilization, it would only take 400 years before it would be completely back to pristine nature again, where you wouldn't even know anything was there. But that would probably occur at the 300-year mark. So you'd still have 700 years. You could do 3 of those resets in a lifetime. And even if it got really nasty like it is now, you reset it, and it takes 300 years for the Earth to regenerate itself. I'm calling that. You woke a couple thoughts up in me. The world's going to stage for war. and there's going to be an alien invasion, and it'll bring in all those global governance things. Everything will be on a global governance strategy. It'll have to be. Any movements of armies, it'll be a global army. Any movements of money or materials or anything, it'll be a global movement of shipping and a global unification of supply chains under one unified body for the globe to move resources around to fight the aliens, dude. Because one government can't do it alone.
Think about the good thing that will come from that idea. So if they got all the militaries together, ready, staged for war, and then all of a sudden they're telling us there's something from outer space that's a threat, and we'll all be set up perfectly for that. We'll get to find out if it's real or not, because I think one thing will happen if it's not real. That'll be we'll defeat the aliens, and then we'll have our world government. Yay, yay for humanity. We ran them off. We scared them. But think about another scenario. If the aliens were actually real and there was an alien presence interacting with governments on Earth, they may not accept interaction with us until we only had one government to speak for the entire planet. They would tell everyone that, we have to be a unified planet, and it'll be a whole new phase of humanity where we get to deal with, learn new things with these aliens, but it's on some things that we have to do. We got to get rid of our weapons. We got to get rid of this. We can't use our fossil fuels. You could just see that it's set up perfect for that scenario. I mean, a lot of people thought that all of these weird things for a long time didn't make any sense. But if you put them together, they really do sound alien. Just the whole weird thing that's been happening with what I was talking about earlier, genetic pollution. These are ideas that would fit perfect into, let's say, a corporate takeover by another governing body. And how do you do that? Well, you would shoot down the stock value of that company you wanted to take. And then when it was worth nothing and at the bottom, you'd buy it up and get all the resources. That almost sounds like what's going on with Earth as a whole and all of the other steps that they've taken. What do you do to a population that you're going to invade? Well, you might want to call them insurgents for one, and then you might want to cut off their food supply, their finances. You might want to cut that off. Their energy production, you might want to cut that off. You might want to make everybody a little malnourished through their food and stuff that they get. And then what happens at the end? We all know what happens at the end because we have domestic cattle. And we know what we do with those at the end of their lifespan, that we feed them, we fatten them up or whatever. But this seems to be a different scenario, like a war scenario, in which you would basically make the population weak, broke, and demoralized. And then you've basically offered them something new, a new way to go, bait and switch, always have a reaction for their solution. Is I think that's what we need to do, is have a reaction for their solution. They always have a solution for the problem that they made, and they make us react to the problem, and then they have the solution. But what if we just react to the solution at the end, because we know what it is, and that's getting rid of any individual human rights that anyone has on the planet. And once you get rid of the borders, firewalls, so to speak, to stop tyranny in its full capacity, they control the speech, the money, the food, everything. It's hard to say with a straight face or deny the fact that we're living in those times. If you're not blaming it on aliens, what would they blame it on? I mean, or would they even care? Would they just go ahead and just let the population decrease? And we could blame it on any number of things. They could call it climate change. They could say it was the war. But aliens does seem to be a play that no one's ever seen before on the planet. It seems like the only thing left, because they've already given us famine, starvation, viruses, etc., nuclear war. They've done it. They've scared us with it. There's really nothing new for them to pull on us besides this idea, and you keep seeing it. So I've been showing everybody this article while we were talking. This article is talking about a new mysterious radio burst in space that has a heartbeat pattern. They keep nudging this idea that right around the corner, we're about to talk to aliens, or at least contact them. And China has decided that this is a feasible idea, and they're putting a lot of resources into it. So that might tell you where the next stage in our fairy tale is going.
Well, I mean, Japan and China have been riddled since prehistory and with stories of contact with star beings. Nomo. Got to check out some of the Japanese folklore. Aboriginals. It doesn't really matter where you go. I mean, star visitation has been part of our civilization for at least these last 17,000 years. So, what is it that allows them to visit or be visited? Was it hallucinogens that allowed them to see these creatures in a visitors or visit their dimensions, but it was always a certain psychoactive substance? Because it would be different in Africa than it might be in South America, and it might be different with the peyote up in the deserts. So each one has their own different specific dimensionality or dimensional beings to contact to. So they would all be slightly different because they're in different dimensions. But the psychoactive substances would allow you to visit that. It would always be that same dimension when you plug in, like psilocybin. Boom, you always go to the same place. So what is it with all of the ancient cultures of the planet? All had visitation or connection or just daily life with these beings. And they always come back down to try to teach again. So I don't know. It's a complex subject. Either we've been run this course and run the same rodeo again and the exact same outcome and the same beings will come back. Something seems to be on a cycle here, and we are definitely into the throes of the beginning of it and getting much more deeply into the beginning of this change that we're seeing. It was frightening and shocking with the virus. The famine, that's so old school. That's so last millennia. Come on, dude. The new four horses of the apocalypse, next round around will be like a rainbow unicorn, a zebra, and what else? Obviously, you can see, and everybody can. We're in the cycle now. We're in the beginning of it. So it's going to intensify every day from this point forward. So things are going to actually move much faster from this point. Like really much, much, much faster, like exponential time. The amount of change in a single week now seems like what it would have been a month, even in the COVID time when it was all new, all fresh. Just so much to absorb, so much information, trying to compare it was a tidal wave of flow. Like everything in a month was just years from before. But now it seems like that same month in 2019 and 20 of just overload of info is now squeezed a year into a week or 6 months into a week. It's crazy how much. It seems like time's speeding up in compression. So how much faster can it get? Because if we continue at this rate, we're going to have a year's worth of change happen in a day. Not too distant in the future. Like by 2024, something, they're going to be a year of change in a day. People's minds aren't handling it. There's freaks everywhere. That song Super Freak? Well, yeah, there's freaks everywhere. I mean, as far as the eye can see, there's freaks. So the population is going to be a danger to itself because the freaks are out and the magnetic field's changing. So think about the karma coming back, and I wanted to allude to something here before we get off the program tonight a little bit. But yeah, why has Iran been put on the back burner for so long? It'd been used as one of those things since I was a kid. Even back in the 70s of the hostage crisis, it's been used since that time. It's been on the scary list of things for like however long I've been alive. It's been in my scary rearview mirror. Iran's just behind you the whole time. It's always in the news. It's going to blow off. It's going to be this. Like how many times have we heard we're like getting closer to war with Iran for my whole life? It's been like that the entire life. So all they're doing is bringing and indoctrinating new people in with the same message again and again. It's getting a little old. And now they're joining the new BRICS currency. So boogeyman. It's almost like a boogeyman with a nuclear weapon with a bar gold that's a weapon of mass destruction and a new financial system. So anyway, I don't know what would be tradable, Ransom. What do you think?
To circle back what you were talking about, it does make you wonder why the governments of the world since World War II have left Iran out of things. Because as you know, the Reich in Germany, they didn't mess with Iran. And some people know why that is because the name of Iran, it means Aryan. That's the ancient Aryan Indus Valley right there. And I believe they were looking for stuff there, and there probably still is things there. But now we're finally technologically able to find out where it is under the sand and dirt and everything. Just like we found all of these other mythological cities, and they're still finding pyramids from Google Earth that are buried all through the Sahara. There's a whole world being uncovered, and I think a lot of it's in Iran. That might be why we've cut them off to the world and made it so hard to get to. You think about all the places with the ancient stuff, it's really hard to get to places. Like even in Turkey now, it's unstable. So it's hard for people to go to these sites of ancient world and do any kind of investigative thing or find new things because they're now disappearing. As you know, ISIS went around Iraq and Afghanistan and started blowing up the oldest of human history that was still around, a lot of the Sumerian stuff. But not only that, giant Buddhas in the side of the mountain. They caved in some of these cave cities that go in that the Hindu made thousands of years ago. They've been slowly, systematically destroying evidence of the old world. And it looks like it was all in preparation for this reset so that they can come out and tell you whatever they want you to believe, and you're going to believe it because the general populace is so uneducated. There are only certain people that know stuff, and they're already viewed as crazy by the general populace. But guess what? We're going to be the ones that are hiding out there with the food and the knowledge and the books. Books are the money, my friend, because when they turn the internet off, each book becomes invaluable. Books on electricity, books on carpentry, books on farming. That's where the future of money's at if we collapse.
Yes, there are going to be people who have thought a few of these things through and are going to fare a little bit better than others. But at the end of it, it only takes one slip on that creek to break your leg and you don't have medical care. I don't care how much free electricity you have. That's where pioneering medicine comes back in. So if you have a book on how to set a fracture, you can see why they bit the belt and drank whiskey before it. Like, pull it. I mean, I don't know how good that would really heal up, but I don't know. We've been here for 10,000 years, at least in this since the Younger Dryas, gone through a cometary impact or on an ice sheet, glacial cooling, heating, massive cataclysms, eruption after eruption, famines, plagues, cometary bombardment, volcanic decades without a summer, and we're still here. So a reset of the monetary system might be a very small thing in comparison, but it gives me hope that after all those cataclysms of what we would consider like really just civilization ending, that we are still here. So something as small as a reset on the currency compared to a comet impact on an ice sheet that wipes out 90% of the animals on the planet. You know, when you look at that in kind of a balanced comparison, you're like, all right, I can reset the dollar, not a problem. But a lot of people don't have the skills. So then, you know, we come back into this. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting world. And every week we march forward, it's going to be like that much closer to it. So my whole call is 16th of September, that week prior to it. That's all the time you really have left to get ready and take that deep breath, because that is the end of time as we know it. The end of the financial system as we know it, and the reset begins in earnest of everything we've ever known gets flipped and reset beginning September 16th, that week of prior to it, which is going to be, like you said, Aquarian energy, September 9th, September 11th.